Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm reviewing 1984 by George Orwell. If you haven't read it, it's a must. This is my second time reading it. The first time was around 2017 when I was first starting to wake up, and I was a big fan of David Icke. He's like my conspiracy daddy. So I read this and Brave New World, and I hadn't read it since. Well, recently it was recommended to me again by two people that I love and respect very much. And just given the way our world is going, it would be a good refresher. So I picked it up again and was able to go through it in a few days. It's addicting. It is so telling. It's so predictive. It's so prophetic. George Orwell did a great job of really nailing how society was going to go. I had a lot of thoughts, so I figured I'd go through a few with you here. If you haven't watched my review on Animal Farm, this was another George Orwell book. He wrote this about 3 years before he wrote 1984. There we go. So this was written in the early 1940s. This was, I think, 1949. So anyway, it's about a guy named Winston, and he is living in 1950s London in a dystopia society called Oceania. Well, it's London, but the bigger land block is called Oceania, and they're constantly at war. Their worldview is called Ingsoc, which means like English socialism. They have a way that they speak to each other. They have a new language called Newspeak, and it's basically like what you think of social media memes. LOL, JK, FR for real, is that what they say? RN right now. So it's like a dumbed down version of the English language, where they just take away different words and make them simple, quick, just out for the masses. Then the idea is so that we will all have uniformity in the way we think. Good think, they call it in Newspeak. So I recommend, before you even read the book, at the back, there's a whole section just on the principles of Newspeak. It's fascinating. So it's not technically, can you see this? There we go, the principles of Newspeak. So it's a few pages, but it's this fabulous section all about why they dumb down the language, the intentionality behind it. He talks about the vocabulary, how they came up with it. So here's just some of their words. I mean, instead of saying dark, you don't need to have dark anymore. Just get rid of the whole word dark. You could say it all with light. Instead of light, you just say unlight. Right? So anyway, so that's just one of the Newspeak words. I thought that was really fun and interesting. Well, it's fun, but I mean, it's sad, because it truly is happening in social media culture. And I hear it and have been guilty of bringing it into my own speech. Oh, JK, LOL. I mean, this stuff then works its way into everyday vernacular, and it's horrifying, right? What is going to happen to us if we can't even speak English anymore, So anyway, Winston lives in Oceania, and he has he lives in the Victory Mansion. So we're always at war, right? And so we're constantly in the state of having an enemy that the government tells us about, and we are winning all of these battles. Oceania always wins. So we're living in the Victory Mansions. It kind of reminds me of Hunger Games, things like that, where there's the victory, stuff like that. So he lives in the Victory Mansions. But of course, the actual apartments that he lives in are really worn down, and there's bugs, and their electricity never works, and they never have enough food. There's always shortages. So it's kind of it reminds me of like the Soylent Green landscape, or any kind of just trashed out city that the government is totally in control. It's run by, they have this idea that Big Brother is in charge of everything, and he's the best thing ever. He's like their god, their hero. So they always praise Big Brother. He's the smartest. He's the most intelligent. He's the most moral. But we don't even know if he's a real character. But of course, the picture here, this is Big Brother. And he has posters of this guy all over the city to remind the population who we have our loyalty to. It kind of reminds me of like Saudi Arabia or Dubai. They have their kings everywhere, all over the streets. I went to Dubai in 2012 and there were pictures of the king everywhere, all over the highways. I thought that was super weird. Like you were supposed to venerate the king. Anyway, so it was similar to that. What did I want to tell you about this book? I kind of want to relate it to how we are now and what I saw as prophetic. It was, by the way, just an overview. It was sad. It's him going through this waking up of rebelling against Big Brother, rebelling against INGSOC, English socialism, their worldview, if you will, which is let's all be comrades and fight together against whatever enemy they give us. He starts to rebel. He finds love with a woman named Julia, and they kind of stick it to the man by engaging in falling in love and, you know, trying to stay out of the camera's views. And then another, a guy named O'Brien, who's an inner party member, befriends him and he thinks maybe they're on the same side and they're going to join the Brotherhood together. The Brotherhood is this like secret organization that's supposed to fight the man. And they have a head named Emmanuel Goldstein. I think that's their head that's going to fight Big Brother, a heretic of the original party of INGSOC. So he's going to join this party with O'Brien, the inner party member who knows more than him, and they sneak around. And at the end, you know, he is betrayed by both and betrays people, and it's just sad. And I wouldn't say it's a happy ending. So if you're looking for a happy book, this is not it at all. But it's a must. Get educated reading this book. So some of the things I wanted to talk about, I made a lot of notes. There really were so many parts of this that just stuck out to me as what's happening right now. So we're in 2024, almost 2020. Is that right? Oh my gosh. No, we're in 2025. I don't even know. Okay. But it's been a long time since he wrote this book. Listen to some of this. Of course, everything is doublethink. That's the word in Newspeak. It's like cognitive dissonance. So one must have cognitive dissonance to be a good party member. Doublethink is what they call. So their slogans of the party is war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. You see it? They have a 2 minutes of hate segment every day where everybody has to go up and listen to Big Brother tell us who the enemy is. And then we just hate that enemy together and we channel all of our rage, which we've gotten from living in poverty and being oppressed. But they don't really know like where that rage is coming from. But these 2 minutes of hate, you get to channel it all towards this enemy that they present you with. And that reminded me of our society when we get presented with an enemy. Right. And then you're supposed to channel all of your anger and your hate, whatever's going on in your own life that you can't deal with when the news tells you to hate somebody, whether it's these. So there, you know, I feel like we're being brought with, you know, men should hate women, go be a red pillar, hate the women. Yeah. And then all these men channel their hatred towards women, or black versus white, the George Floyd thing. Let's all hate white people now. Like they're the worst. You know, let's all, oh, can you believe this happened? Like that reminds me of the 2 minutes of hate. These little spurious movements that come up that channel your hatred and your rage against a specific group. That reminds me of that, where they have propaganda and they have songs and they have news about things and they parade these terrible people in front of you that you just throw things at and you hate them. So that's the 2 minutes of hate. And you'll stop your day and basically pay respects to the 2 minutes of hate every day. Even at work, they'll stop work. I want to talk about the telescreens. Everywhere there are TV screens that are two ways. So they're talking to you, they're singing you trashy government songs, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, right? That kind of stuff, like really cheesy nationalistic songs. And then also they can see you and they're watching your facial expressions. They're watching the way you walk. They're trying to see if there's any kind of thought crime that happens. It reminds me of the Tom Cruise movie. What was that movie with Minority Report. Remember where it was panopticism where they had cameras everywhere? This is George Orwell's 1984 world. There's cameras everywhere. They're called the telescreens. They're hidden behind paintings. They're everywhere. So you're never in a moment without a telescreen. Unless you're in the proletariat. So if you're the lowest trashy type of people that are uneducated and, in the outskirts of town, they don't care about you. So sometimes you can get by without having a telescreen if you're either one of those people living out into like kind of no man's land, or if you're an outer party member, you can there's every once in a while you can find a corner that the telescreen can't see you. But he talks about that. And that's, now guys, we have a phone in our hand that can hear us. And we have computers with cameras. So when we're walking around our homes, we're able to be seen and heard all the time. So we think that they're not on, but is that the reality? Is at some point they're going to turn them on and use it against us if we say something against the party line? And, there are party lines now. We have this idea of being politically correct. Well, what happens? People in England are now getting arrested for tweeting something wrong. What if we take that a step further, bring it here? It's still, Western thought. It's basically the same powers that we have there that are here. So if they take that here and they start turning on our cameras, what's the difference between his world and what's going on over there just with Twitter? Or, I haven't heard of anything on Instagram or YouTube being arrested for that, but it couldn't be that far off if you say something against the party. God forbid you say anything against Israel. I mean, at some point, anyway, that's a side piece. But anyway, it also talks about the trash that the party gives the proles to keep them stupid. This reminds me of newsfeed. They actually call this prole feed. So that's the actual newspeak term that he came up with. Prole feed, meaning the rubbishy entertainment and spurious news which the party handed out to the masses. We have something called news feed on our Facebook. That can't be a coincidence. Could it be a coincidence? News feed? And is it really news? Basically anything that comes from the elites is trash, and it's meant to hurt us. Everything they say is lies. So, well, if it's not, there's a malicious intent behind it, right? So that George Orwell talks about that. Talks about trash for the proles from the records department at Minitrue. That's the Ministry of Truth. That's what they call the ministry. That's like their news department, the Ministry of Truth, which of course doles out lies. And he says, here were produced rubbishy newspapers containing almost nothing except sports, crime, astrology, sensational 5-cent novelettes, films oozing with sex, and sentimental songs, which were composed entirely by mechanical means on a special kind of kaleidoscope. Also, a whole subsection called pornosec. That's what it was called in Newspeak, pornosec, engaged in producing the lowest kind of pornography, which was sent out in sealed packets, and which no party member, other than those who worked on it, was permitted to look at it. So, I know for a fact that is a massive weapon that is being discharged on our society right now, and it's ruining men and a lot of women as well. And that's on purpose. And even in this book is saying you're not allowed to look at that unless you're a prole, which they think are these like unwashed masses in the book. So if you're watching that, just know that they hate you and they're doing that on purpose. It's not like, that's a weapon that's being used against you. So that's not a normal thing. Julia, the girlfriend in this book, actually works in the pornosec department because it said all the workers in pornosec except the head of the department were girls. The theory was that men whose sex instincts were less controllable than those of women were in greater danger of being corrupted by the filth they handled. Isn't that true? Not for all, obviously, but I think that there is some truth in that. It was nicknamed the Muck House by people who worked in it. So, other things I wanted to talk about. I kind of already talked about the 2 minutes of hate. They have an entire week. I don't know why I'm showing you this like you can see this. Can you see this? There we go. Hate week. The first thing I thought when I realized they have an entire week that's designated to just hating people or hating the enemy it's the opposite of Orthodox Holy Week, but also it reminds me of stuff like 9/11, where we get the beautiful opportunity to have it rubbed in our face every single year with horrific graphic pictures and videos of people jumping out of the buildings and planes hitting the buildings and firefighters with dust on their face running up the Manhattan streets every year. It's like a ritual, and the reading of the names every September. It reminded me of Hate Week, of this unified, nationalistic, let's all be sad and hateful and direct our rage. Where do we direct it? They will give us where we direct it. They will give us the enemy, right? So we don't look at who actually perpetrated it, which a lot of the times, and in this case, of course, was a false flag to keep us doing their will and under submission. So we don't look to the actual perpetrators, which is them. They have spots in here talking about false flags right after the Hate Week, which I thought was, where is it? There. False flag bombings. The rocket bombs which fell daily on London were probably fired by the government of Oceania itself just to keep the people frightened. So if we don't have false flags here right now happening all the time, so all these psyops, these psychological operations that we're seeing, for example, COVID, right? That was a big one that our own people did to us to keep us scared, hitting us, putting it in the news that we should all be scared. We're going to kill our grandmas. Oh no. Like there's this horrible menacing thing outside, but the reality is let's all train our proles, our proletariat, our unwashed masses to put masks on their face and be scared all the time and direct your hate maybe towards China, right? Let's hate the Chinese now. Let's be scared of foreigners. Let's, whatever have you. And the culprit has switched a couple times, which was funny because in here, the next page, name of the enemy. Where can you see that? No. Okay. Yeah. But I can't see it, but the name of the enemy changes depending on what the party, the people in charge want you to hate. And that happened with us during COVID, didn't it? There was always somebody new, some new terrorist or some new person that did it, or like, where do we direct our rage? What's going on? Do we direct it towards our neighbor who's wearing a mask that we think is stupid? Do we direct it towards our neighbor who's not wearing a mask? Do we direct it towards people who are, it was constantly like, you should be mad at this person. You should yell at your Starbucks person who's, not enforcing rules in the restaurant to keep people out. It was a wild time. And I feel like that is all part, and it was talked about here in 1984 about how this works. It's all by design. It's not organic. These things that happen are planned to keep us suppressed and fearful and angry. So there was another part in here that I loved. I'm going to read it to you because it broke my heart. I identify as a conspiracy theorist, but the reality is I'm saying that kind of to laugh for people who, if I seem like a crazy person to them, I like to laugh when I say I'm a conspiracy theorist because it kind of takes some of the edge off of the truth that I'm trying to get to for people that have not started their journey. So I'm giving them an out for them to laugh at me if they want to. But the reality is I'm a truth seeker, and it can be a very, very lonely journey. And when I attempt to talk to people about it, the majority of the time they don't want to engage. They think I'm cuckoo pants. And it can be very, very lonely. So that's why I say I'm a conspiracy theorist. I always like to give them the option to laugh at me. So I think that it's nicer than them going through a massive mental breakdown at the reality of what I'm saying, or the truth that really is under the surface of the reality that we live in, which is obviously a spiritual battleground, and it's very serious and it's very real, and what we do matters and truth matters. So anyway, that's a little side point, but here I related to George Orwell and it made me feel less alone. So if you feel alone in your search for truth, George Orwell will be your buddy, And here's one line that he says that will hopefully touch your heart the way it touched mine. In a way, the worldview of the party imposed itself most successfully on people incapable of understanding it. They could be made to accept the most flagrant violations of reality because they never fully grasped the enormity of what was demanded of them and were not sufficiently interested in public events to notice what was happening. By lack of understanding, they remained sane. They simply swallowed everything. And what they swallowed did them no harm because it left no residue behind, just as a grain of corn will pass undigested through the body of a bird. So I'll read my favorite line again. By lack of understanding, they remained sane. So that just broke my heart into a million pieces because I feel that so many people, they're clinging to their sanity rather than starting to go down the rabbit holes, right? Because I'm sure anyone who is like me, who has gone down rabbit holes, how many times have you really had to question your sanity and pick yourself up and keep going and sometimes wish that you just took the blue pill, right? Remember the Matrix? You take the red pill and wake up, or the blue pill stay. Sometimes, you wish, but you can't go back. You've already chosen the red pill, which, of course, red pill leads to the black pill, which you become nihilistic and everything's terrible and you'll never be able to solve anything. And that, of course, ultimately, hopefully, leads to the white pill, which is the best one, which is Orthodox Christianity, thank God. So not all is lost. God wins always. So there is hope. So that's what we can cling to, right? Conspiracy people. But it is nice to be able to understand our brothers and sisters who have not taken the red pill and they're still in blue pill land. And George Orwell so beautifully describes that by saying, by lack of understanding, they remained sane. So it is quite a journey to get to the white pill. So I have some compassion for those people, but it is lonely, right? You want to connect with people that are still in blue pill land. Because sometimes even if you're in white pill land, you can drift back into black pill sometimes. And you want company. And you want other people to understand the reality that you see, and they just don't. And that can feel very lonely. So it's good to know that they're remaining sane by being in blue pill land. I hope that this analogy wasn't too much, but that's kind of where my brain went. You also start to fall in love with Winston, the character, because he's trying to rebel against Big Brother and society and their oppression. But at one point, he basically sells his soul. And it's horrifying because the guy is asking him if he wants to join the Brotherhood. What would you do to join the Brotherhood? What would you do to fight Big Brother? Would you do this? Would you do that? Would you do this? How committed are you? And he's basically selling his soul. Like, I would do anything. I would murder. I would cheat. I would steal. And it's just kind of like watching your favorite person who had good intentions go down a bad track that any of us could do. And so that's kind of terrifying. It's very telling. Like, those of us who think that we're awesome and fighting the man, we're still capable of horrendous sin, starting with good intentions. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So there's a scene in here that happens. Also, MK Ultra is a big part of this book. They never outrightly say MK Ultra, but this is a big part of their way to keep people in line. They call their torture department the Ministry of Love. So if you commit a thought crime, which is their newspeak word for, potential, like just doing anything that would be out of the norm of the orthodoxy of INGSOC, English socialism, you get taken to the Ministry of Love and they torture you and they mind control you and they deprive you of sleep and they kill, they torture you with lights, they take away your food. So you're starving. They physically hit you. They mentally torture you. So this was all written in 1949, guys. So can you imagine? That was like right after World War II, where, I've heard of the NAZIs starting that sort of research. This is way later than that. Can you imagine what kind of psychological operations, what kind of manipulation they can do now with technology? what they're doing that we don't know about. So it was pretty scary. And you kind of watch Winston, the main character, struggle with that and keeping his sanity and keeping his heart intact. So I'm trying to think what else I could tell you. I liked this line about controlled insanity. If human equality is to be forever averted, if the high, as we have called them, are to keep their places permanently, then the prevailing mental condition must be controlled insanity. I'll read that one more time. If human equality is to be forever averted, if the high, as we have called them, are to keep their places permanently, then the prevailing mental condition must be controlled insanity. So I don't know about you, but I was speaking with friends a couple weeks ago, and I just said, is it possible that the world truly is going crazy? I feel like the world is going more and more crazy over the last 4 or 5 years. Like, it's really insane. Or am I the one who's going insane? And they said, no, the world really is going insane. It might be a combination of both. But that's not by design. You know, I think our social media hitting us with these clips, the prol feed, if you will, we can't stay sane. We can't keep our thoughts in order. Our attention span is becoming obliterated. People that are still watching the news, which there's a lot of them, especially seniors. You know, I train seniors for a living, and a lot of them are watching these news cycles 24/7. And these poor people cannot get a break. And they're so angry all the time, like seniors that need to be out enjoying their grandkids or walking around in the grass or just eating a nice meal. Like, they're constantly being tortured by the TV or the telescreen, right? So it truly is sad. It's controlled insanity, and they're the ones controlling it. Bastards. But here's a line that you can relate with George Orwell again. He says, there was truth and there was untruth. And if you clung to the truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad. I love that. I'll read that again. There was truth and there was untruth. And if you clung to the truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad. So, I love the truth. Here's another part that I thought was interesting. Mr. Carrington. So Winston, the main character, had this room that he would rent out that he thought was free from the telescreens, like the telescreens. It was in a prol section of the town. So he thought he was safe from the thought police. He was away from the party members. And this is where he took Julia, his girlfriend, and they did all the little girlfriend, boyfriend things. He thought he was free, and they would read together and do all these forbidden things. And Mr. Charrington, was the man who rented him the room. And he was like a collector of books and like old historic things and all these things. Anyway, turns out that Mr. Charrington was an actor, and he was actually part of the thought police, and he turned them in. But the whole time you have this impression that Mr. Charrington is like this really good guy who is there for him and helps him. But the reality is he was acting. And when he came in and exposed himself as thought police, he like took off the mask and he changed his mustache and he changed his facial and his clothing and everything. And he looked a lot different than the character that he was playing. Physically, he like was in character. And that reminds me of how people on the main world stage right now are not who we think they are. So if you look at, they are trying to fool us all the time. For example, I heard that Justin Bieber is playing The Weeknd. So, or Shia LaBeouf is playing Post Malone. So they're just characters getting paid to fool us and constantly wave it in our face that they always get the attention. They can play whatever role they want. These are just the elite vampires that are in our face playing roles and characters on the TV, which is all fake on the telescreens, and then feeding it to us in the prol feed or our news feed on Instagram or Facebook. Or anyway, it's very sad. So the Mr. Charrington character reminded me of that, which is he's the devil in disguise, which is what our elite superstars are. They're just the devils in disguise. These are not people to be worshipped. They're not our friends. Mr. Charrington was not his friend. These people on the news are not our friends. They do not want us to have the truth. So I thought that was worth sharing. So that's it. The end of the book is pretty brutal. It's not really a happy ending. I cried. So it's probably good to mix this book with another happy one next. So, but yeah, I would say it's a must, even if you haven't read it in a while. There's some great reviews online available for this book. And also, if you haven't watched my Animal Farm review, that was a good one too. I'd probably go watch this one first because he wrote this one 3 or 4 years prior to 1984. But I think that's all I have. I'm going to look one more time to see if there's anything I missed. Oh, the big thing too is the children are spies. So the children are telling on their parents for thought crime. So the kids are being educated in public facilities. So you think about public school brainwashing your kids. They're being brainwashed to spy on their parents and turn them in for thought crimes. If they see anything, if they talk in their sleep. So this is what's happening now for people that send their kids to public school. You don't know who's training your kids. So here it is. Watch out for the kids. All right, y'all. That's it. Have a wonderful December, and I will be on soon.